Very soon we are ready to begin to stitch. You may have noticed that the fabric is not wide enough for this kayak. So the idea is we're going to take some of all this extra fabric and put it into the deck here to make it tight and to not waste too much fabric. The first thing we're going to do now is we're going to make a nice straight cut down the middle here. And this first cut we're going to make is going to be straight and good looking, because we're going to steer after it when we do our final stitching. On the other edge here, we just allow that to be plenty, so we have plenty of space for overlap, like at least 5-6 centimeters. That would be 2.5 inches at least. But now we need to concentrate about getting this first line straight. So I begin here where the ends meet. That should be the middle. And then I make some little pencil marks along what I think looks like the middle. And of course you should be careful to avoid cutting your zigzag thread. That would be a shame. When you've made the little marks, you should find your cutting tool and let it heat and cut. That was our first cut. And now for the second. It doesn't need to be very precise, just make sure that it overlaps by at least 5 centimeters. For the first cut. Like I told you before, this is a minimal waste production here. You don't throw away anything, and now we're going to use the leftovers. This piece is cut out in the front, and this is the excess material from the zigzag stitching, and I'm going to show you how to stitch this piece into the deck. I already did here in the back, as you can see, and I made a really tight stitching here, just putting the two edges together and going around. And now this is ready to be stitched together. Now I'm going to show you the technique of doing it here. I begin the stitching with a simple knot. That's it. And then I put it over. I'm stitching this to the widest part. Remember how I cut this, trimmed it straight? So I'm gonna stitch this edge to the longest one. So this will be the overlap going over here. And you need to start a little before the cockpit. The cockpit is supposed to be in this area. It rests here on the massig. So I take 10-15 centimeters from the massig and behind, just to be sure to have plenty of fabric, and I start here. I put the two edges closely together, and about 1 centimeter from the edge I pull the needle through and I go forward 1 centimeter ahead of me and 1 centimeter from the edge. It's really easy to remember. 1, 1, 1, and 1 centimeter would be 1/3 of an inch or something. And I just I don't pull hard yet. I just go forward because it's easier that way. Nice and slow. And when I have stitched a little bit, like 10 centimeters, 4 inches, I'm gonna pull it. Oh, I do it now. So now I'm tightening it like this, and then I continue. And now I can tighten it all the way. Every stitch is getting tight. And when I get ready for the next stitch, I notice that the one I just did gets a little loose, but it doesn't matter. I can easily pull 2 or 3 stitches at the time. When I get to the other end, I just tie a knot on the thread, and we're ready to do the next stitching. After I've done this, I can stretch it a little bit, if it's possible. You see, it gets pretty tight. And this is actually a very traditional way of doing it. You know, sealskin never had the right size in the old days, so people would patch them together. Several skins would make one kayak, and you would have all kinds of seams and patches on the deck. I just started stitching. The thing you do is you follow this straight edge that you cut earlier, and you're just gonna start with a simple knot. You're gonna make long stitches on the inside, following the edge, about 1 centimeter from the edge. And you're gonna make these small stitches on the outside. I'm gonna show you from different angles so you get an idea of what I'm doing. But as I said, I just started up here with a knot, and now I'm gonna show you how to do it. So this would be 2.5 centimeters, 1 inch. And make sure that you have a little space between the fabric, so the place you stick the needle in and the place you pull the needle out, they are quite far apart, about 1 inch or maybe even a little more. And you don't need to tighten it very hardly. You can just go back and forth. You go straight through, short stitch, and you take the next one, long one, along the edge. It goes like maybe 1 centimeter from the straight edge here. And again, you leave a lot of extra space. I think I said 1 inch, but this is far more, 3-4 centimeters maybe. And after having taken a couple of stitches, say 4 or 5, 6 stitches, you take it out here on the inside. You grab the thread really hard and you just pull it together like this. You see what happens? This pretty loose fabric comes together. So 1 inch, 2.5 centimeters. Yeah, I think I'm maybe 4 centimeter here. 1 centimeter. From the edge it's always the same distance, 1 centimeter. So, having moved forward a little bit, it's time to stretch. So I put like this, and I continue. You can see when I continue, it springs back a little bit, but that doesn't matter because the next time I stretch it, I'm gonna pull that together also. And this is only the first stitching. After this, we're gonna trim this edge, which is there's too much fabric here. We're gonna trim it quite a lot with the cutting tool. And then we're gonna make a new kind of stitching, which will make it look nice and also make it completely waterproof, or at least almost completely waterproof. It needs varnish to be waterproof as well. Now we have come so far. The first stitching is done and we have plenty of fabric here to cover the stitches. So I'm gonna take my cutting tool and I try to make a cut now. I'm steering after the visible stitches here on the outside. And I'm gonna leave about 3 centimeters of fabric. And you shouldn't worry too much about cutting the first stitches you made. It's super solid now. Everything has been locked with stitches, so just cut over it. When we get out to the end here, I can show you a little detail. You can see how I have put the stitches out on the side here. The next stitching we're gonna do is gonna be a fold like this, and I really don't want it to be lying down on the side of the kayak, so I try to point out the stitches. They've been following the edge here all the way, but now at the end try to put them out on the opposite edge. There we go. Leave a little extra out here. Another thing you may have noticed is that I put some rope in the other end. I usually put the rope in front and the rope in the back end at this point because they are hard to get to. So I need to cut this slightly in a slightly pointy way so we can make a really thin end like this. I'm gonna put on a piece of tape so that I can get it in this tiny hole like this. It's kind of hard when the little threads are in the way. There we go. And I kind of screw it in until I can grab it on the inside, pull it out, and I tie a single knot, pull it back in, tighten it, and now I'm gonna pull it over, and from the outside of the gunnel I'm gonna add this much, about 15 centimeters of rope should be enough. I cut it and And I'm gonna take a little piece of tape here as well. I'm gonna tighten it slightly, and I'm gonna make this half stitch knot as close to the gunnel as I can. And when I then pull the rope from the outside, I tighten the knot, and I get about the right amount of slack on the rope. Can just cut away the excess rope here, and now we're ready to stitch it together. I'm just making a double or triple knot on the thread, and I have put this crooked needle on the other end, and this is the overlap fabric. I'm gonna begin by sticking the needle in midway on that piece, and then I'm gonna fold it, stretch it a little bit, put the needle down here and up here, following the direction of the fold, and which follows the direction of the previous stitching. And when I move forward here, I make the thread run in the inside the fold. So it's one stitch, and then the next stitch goes here. You see the needle. It's not visible on the inside. Goes inside the fold and out. And then you pull in the direction of the stitching, and you can make a little distance between the edge of the fold and the place where the needle goes through. That allows us to stretch the fabric even more. Again, I'm pulling the thread really hard. That flattens the fold and tightens the fabric a little extra. And again, like before, when I tighten this, it comes nicely together. When I let go, it comes up a little bit, and when I work around it, it opens up a little bit. It doesn't matter, because as I move forward, stitches behind me will tighten up. Make sure to make the stitches long enough so that it won't take forever to finish this, but also it should be tight, watertight, so if you make them too long it may not be completely watertight. On the other hand, if you make them too short, just take a lot of time, and there's no point in that. Notice how I angle the needle every time I go through. I angle it a little bit forward, like not straight, but forward. And when I get out of the fold, same as the case, I angle it a little forward, not straight out, but a little forward. And as you can see, I try to make the fold come out to the edge. And now it's time to cut that very first stitching we did. This one can be cut open safely now. Brings back a little bit. And now I can also cut away a little bit of the fabric on the inside here. So what we end up with will be a fold that will fold down nicely. And I cut away a lot of excess material. And now I will show you. So this folding just continues around the tip of the kayak. I fold it up underneath. And maybe now I'll do some extra stitches and go back one turn where I came from, and that will finish it off nicely.